It is solid. I'll put the link to the Rugby Athlete Blueprint Telegram channel in the comments. I'll wait 1 second to make sure that everything is good. I'm also going to grab myself water. Come back here. There we go. Hopefully that wasn't disgustingly loud. I think we are good to go. So I will just begin by saying welcome everyone to the Rugby Muscle YouTube channel and podcast and Facebook group. I guess this is will also be broadcasting, because for some reason I'm like that abused spouse that keeps going back. I keep going to that Facebook group because it's nice to get some interaction there, but we will be leaving it for. Originally, it was going to be Discord. I've had too much of an issue with Discord. We're going to Telegram, but whatever the case may be, if you're joining there, say hi. If you're joining on the YouTube, give it a thumbs up and also say hi in the comments. The Q&As are here, and they're going to be here to stay on the YouTube channel. They're here to, and they exist to serve you guys who have any questions that you have that need to, because the way things work with strength and conditioning in particular, but also nutrition as well, is that every answer is always going to be it depends. And time again on Instagram, on YouTube, in the comments, and just whenever people message me through Rugby Muscle, they ask real specific questions or generic questions that they ask specific questions which don't have the context for me to give them the answer, or they ask generic questions which also don't give me a good answer that applies to their situation. So what we have here every single month on the YouTube channel is a way for you to ask those questions where we can get into a little bit of depth, and hopefully you get your understanding. So if you like that, give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions yourself, drop them in the comments below. If you drop them after the fact, we'll still do a new video on it, whether that's for a future live Q&A, or if it's a good question and it's something that I feel like will apply to lots of people, it will get its own video as well. So always looking for feedback, always looking for questions, put them in the comments below. For now though, I think we've only got a couple questions as it pertains to this live Q&A. My focus has been a little bit away from the YouTube since the Rugby World Cup has finished. I've been launching a brand new program, a 2-week free program. If you wish to join, I'll put a link in the comments. I think it's already there. And that will be for the 14-day Rugby Athlete Blueprint. The whole point about this Rugby Athlete Blueprint is to guide you through, again, sort of similar vein to what I'm trying to get at with these Q&As, but a real specific, and this has taken me years to get into the order and to really whittle down into what's important for you. And it will be 14 days of coaching around weight training, conditioning, nutrition, recovery, and mindset. And in that way, we're going to give you a real good blueprint that you can use going forward as a rugby athlete to continually progress year round and completely blow yourself away with your ability to perform. That is a 100% guarantee. If you enter this Rugby Athlete Blueprint, you commit to the 14 days, you do the tasks, you go through with the program, 100%, you stick with that, you will change and revolutionize your ability to play on the rugby pitch. So it'll all be through Telegram right now. So if you go on over to Telegram, I put it in the first comments. I'll just make sure it's there. I'll just add it once again just to make sure, and put Telegram group. Boom. It's in the comments if you're interested in joining. We start on Sunday with a view to really kick it into gear on Monday, and it's live because I will be coaching you. I will be getting in touch with you. This is for athletes that aren't already in the rugby muscle sphere. As you'll see right now, the website is being relaunched. So right now it's whittled down to its basically nothing. With the idea that we want to focus on one thing at a time. So if you're looking for Team Rugby Muscle, it's not there. You're not going to be able to find it. If you're looking for Rugby Muscle Elite, we can do that, but I want to make sure that you're someone that is actually keen for it. So you have to jump through the hoops. You'll have to message me personally, and then we can go through that way. There's always going to be room for coaching. There's just times when I'm more and more available and easier to contact for commitment to that. Whereas, oh no. Well, that is an absolutely outstanding blooper. Let me make sure this is back in action. Well, how about that? If you're joined live, you got an absolute treat of a fail there. That is. I'm so happy with that. Give the video a thumbs up just for that, because I know there's a few of you joining live, so please do that. And again, ask any questions. I'm going to leave that in, and I'm going to leave it in the post edit as well as when we publish this to the podcast. Type up any questions in the comments, and I will make sure to answer them. I know this is very early actually not too early in the UK, but very early in the US, so we probably will be missing people. If you're watching this past the fact, let me know what times during the day for the next month's live, and potentially, because I'm testing this out for the Blueprint as well, because we'll be doing some live coaching there. Let me know when the best time is for you to join something like this, so that I've got more feedback, so I know when that would be best for you guys. Anyway, with that all over with, let's find the questions for this month. So here we go. First one, a World Cup one. We'll get to that first, and we've got another strength and conditioning one after that. So first one, what about a Northern Hemisphere All-Stars versus Southern Hemisphere All-Stars? American Union fans are keen to host the event in the USA. Your opinion on this will be much appreciated. I think that will be a waste of everyone's time. It'll make a lot of money. It'll be fun, but that's not what rugby is about for me. Rugby is professional rugby needs to be taken more seriously. That's why we're doing all these goofy events, it's why the World Cup, whilst it was great, and in fact this one was great because of there was a level of competitiveness throughout the group stage, and that was probably mostly because of the dodgy draw, right? And also due to the lower tiered nations really outperforming themselves. And as much as they did outperform themselves, I guess Portugal beating Fiji was huge, but there was never, Fiji are always at tier 1.5. We're still not seeing, apart from Japan, when they broke into the tier 1 by beating South Africa in 2015, we're not seeing many upsets like that. Perfect example, if we want a big global game, doing stuff like this, to me, doesn't make sense. You want to actually level the playing field rather than go Northern Hemisphere, like doing odd occasions like this. You want a more competitive calendar and more compelling games with the lower ranked teams throughout the 4 years between the World Cups, right? That's going to not only obviously engage fans to these lower ranked teams, but also bring those lower ranked teams money, a sense of purpose, and a challenge that they then need, that they then will learn from, because right now they don't have that. And the upsets are always about one game where a team might outperform itself, but more often than not, I saw it time and time again in the World Cup where the lower ranked teams would start okay, but because rugby's such a momentum based game, it's they ended up always losing the momentum because of one or two mistakes that they would have they made, which are quite not amateurish, but not of the experience of these tier one nations. Talking to the ref, not quite finishing a try when it was on, not taking the points when they're offered, perhaps, or giving away a silly penalty, or giving away a silly yellow card, giving away a number of silly penalties that potentially refs at their level don't spot, but refs at a higher level are always going to spot and always going to punish for you and always going to take that momentum away from your team. And I feel like tier 2 nations suffered from that a lot in this World Cup. And I think the more experience they have at that level, the better the game's going to be. We've noticed that they have planned, and I think they've confirmed that there's going to be, I think it's 30 teams, or is it 24 teams? They've expanded the World Cup to, I think it's 30. I think it's 24 teams. So they're adding in more teams, obviously from tier 2, which then might even out the groups, which will just mean less upsets, less intense-ish group matches like what we saw with New Zealand, France, South Africa, Ireland, Ireland, Scotland to an extent. Those matches, we'll see even less of those. I want rugby to be global, and even in the way that football is, right? Or soccer for you Yanks, right? Because there's a sport where Argentina won the World Cup, but didn't Argentina lost to Japan, I believe, in the Football World Cup. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. It was either Japan, I think it was Saudi Arabia was the World Cup before, but I'm not going to go look it up now. Point being, you're never going to get an upset like that followed by, for a team that actually end up winning. So that's my opinion. I don't like this stuff. I kind of stand the lines, but the problem with the lines is you have one team from all the Northern Hemisphere that goes down south, and then the rest of rugby is sort of waiting, and it's just all done on tradition, like the Six Nations, which is great, the Rugby Championship, which is great, but they're all done by tradition because those powers want to keep the money for themselves. We need to sacrifice some of that in order to grow the game, and it's the only way it's going to happen, is by sacrificing that. And if you've seen rugby, World Rugby even wants I think it's a 12-team calendar going through now. Again, all about the money, all about keeping the power in the countries that already have power. Because as much as the World Rugby say they want a globally competitive game, the teams at the top want that, but without sacrificing anything that they've got as far as power goes already. And obviously, that doesn't work. That's just not the way it works. They're worried about sacrificing their own part of the pie, whereas really we're just trying to grow the pie. And obviously, if we do grow the pie, your piece of that pie will be smaller than your current piece, as far as not in actual monetary or actual volume terms of that piece of the pie, but actually in as far as a ratio of the whole pie. That pie analogy has been done to death, but you get my point, right? We're holding rugby. People at the top are holding rugby back from what it can be, in my opinion, from the money and from the politics. Anyway, that's that. Cool. I think we can compete. We definitely can't compete with football. This person says, Ayanda says, would love to see rugby go as global as football. Yeah, we're not going to compete with football, and I think the biggest problem in the US is also like they're building the game from the top down, and it never works like that. Like Uruguay, Chile, Argentina, those three nations have, clearly, judging by the fact that rugby's they made the World Cup and the US didn't, they don't have professional leagues, but they play rugby in schools. You don't play rugby in schools in America. Rugby, that needs to change, and that needs to change in England as well. And it needs, the best countries are in the World Cup, the best countries that play the best standard of rugby have the biggest playing pool because they all play it as kids. Even in England, we're suffering quite a lot because not only during the pandemic, but before that, participation in rugby has dropped because of this notion that it is a scary game and everyone's going to get hurt. Meanwhile, MMA participation has skyrocketed. Boxing has skyrocketed. So I don't think it's an actual danger. I think it's a perceived danger, and I think it's a perceived fear of getting sued. It's holding us back. All right, that's enough grander rugby talk. We'll now get into some strength and conditioning stuff. I will mention that I do have a hard stop. I need to leave in about 20 minutes because I've got to go get my laundry. So we won't go the full hour. I don't think we're going to go the full hour with the questions. Let me know any other questions that you have in the comments below. Always love hearing your response. Thanks for that, Ayanda. And Ayanda also asked the question, what's the best training split for someone that wants to play rugby but can only train 3 times a week? Dude, 3 times a week is absolutely enough, as in types of compound movements and fitness exercises stacked. So in Team Rugby Muscle, for every 3 programs we have that involve 4 or more days a week, we have at least 2 that are 2 or 3 days a week, meaning that nearly half of our programs are at least half of our programs are 3 days or less. So if you're in season, that works quite well anyway. If you're off season, that's still fine. And the reality is that I think this is something that we'll touch on in the Rugby Athlete Blueprint, where a lot of athletes let themselves down is that they think that they need to be, they are benefited by trying to go with like a full-time schedule, even though they've got their stress of work, school, family, whatever, and there's no way that they can train 6 times a week. And even if they do, they're going to sacrifice work, school, sleep, all that stuff that actually feeds into it and is never going to be, and that stuff is never sustainable to sacrifice long term. So what you end up doing is you do 2 to 3 weeks where you're really motivated, your schedule inevitably gets on top of you, and then which you can't keep up. And this was inevitable, but it's seen as a failure because you tried and you failed, rather than actually saying, okay, I'm only going to go to the gym twice a week. And this is what I would say to you if you want to train. If you can only train 3 times a week, I'd probably only hit the gym twice, and my other session would probably be either a tempo run, or some tempo runs, as in, if you've seen the rugby conditioning guide, it's basically sprints at about 60 to 70% so that you're focused on your form and you're keeping it aerobic. I've also got a video going through tempo sprints, or it could just be a real long, 5 to 10 Ks, low intensity pace, not letting your heart rate get above 145. That would be one of my sessions there, conditioning. Or if you're already really fit and you're doing a lot of other stuff and you want to get faster, that session could also be a sprint session. But I would make sure at least one of those 3 sessions is basically conditioning focused. That could also be done in the gym as well, but you get my point. 2 times in the gym, 1 time on conditioning. The other 2 sessions, weight sessions, I just do 2 big full body sessions, prioritizing a little bit more volume, or focus, should I say, rather than volume, because volume can get misconstrued, to the area that you specifically want to improve. Now, if you're an absolute beginner, that doesn't really matter, right? So you'll do a little bit of power work to begin your session, or a little bit of core work to begin your session. I like the core work at the beginning because most people will skip it if it's done at the end. So chuck it at the beginning, get yourself nice and warm, get yourself nice and prepped for your big lifts. Get some big lifts, so 1 lower body push, maybe on the other day do a lower body hinge. Maybe do them both. It depends what your time, how long you have in the gym for these sessions. And then you would have 1 upper body push, 1 upper body pull. And then those 4 movements can be repeated, or you can do different variations throughout the session A and session B. That would be your general structure. That would be your heavy work, and then you would try and look to do some sort of, and you would try and tick boxes as you go, right? So you just have to make sure that 1 or 2 of your movements throughout your gym sessions are going to be unilateral, meaning one side moving and the other side not, or both sides moving but separately from each other. And you would want to make sure that you're also having some rotation work and potentially some lateral work in there as well. So that's it, right? The bilateral stuff is good for strength work, and it's the easiest way to get it done. But I would still make sure, especially for the lower body, that you're incorporating some level of lunges or split squats as well. People love carries. I'm going to be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of carries. But I mean, maybe they have their place, but I much prefer to do more of your heavier work, more of your explosive work. Sometimes your higher rep work, but I prefer it more as the heavy stuff because that really helps you. You'll feel that on the field. So in summary, one conditioning session at least. And again, you would adjust this as your priority. If you're really unfit but you're kind of strong enough, you do 2 conditioning sessions. Your other session would be your weights, right? But if it's just general, you're okay and you're like a 5 out of 10 at everything, then you do 1 conditioning session focused, just conditioning, long run, tempo run, or some sort of aerobic intervals in the gym. Then you would do 2 full body sessions, starting out with power. Do power when you're fresh, move explosively as possible, make sure you're rested enough, but don't lollygag. Some level of jump, some level of explosive throws or slams. Just get you going, get you moving really fast, and then do some heavy work. So people like to start out with lower body just because you're a little bit more fresh and you can put more into it. I don't think doing pull-ups or heavy bench really takes it out of me for my squats. I can still do my squats just fine. So you're fine however you want to do it. Pick a push that you like, pick a pull that you like, pick a squat pattern that you like, and then maybe either do a hinge or a some sort of reverse lunge or split squat as well. And then from there, throw on any other accessories for any other body parts that you want, potentially neck, potentially calves, potentially shoulders, potentially rear delts, arms, of course, and then you're done. Don't look down on any of that extra bodybuilding stuff at the end either. It all has its place, and if you're in the gym, get that stuff done, and it will pay off. Like you're not looking at Eben Etzebeth and saying he doesn't do any arm work, so get that arm work done. Yeah, that training split, full body always, and then just prioritizing what you want to do. So and that's the biggest thing. I'll talk about that later. Actually, we'll go into that in the blueprint. So if you want to find out more about how to prioritize like the specific components of rugby when we're looking at power, speed, strength, conditioning, and what's the other one? Movement capabilities. So either agility, mobility, and coordination, athleticism. Those 5 things are going to be what makes up your rugby physical performance. And so you have to figure out what out of those things you need to apply more of your time to. There is no best split, right? There's you and where you need to improve. All right. Next question. Let me grab a quick. Mario says, "Hey TJ, what's your opinion about barbell dumbbell complexes for muscle building? The way Dan John and Ashley Jones recommend them. On YouTube, you can find good videos." Why is the camera going in on my charger there? But I'm certain that you are familiar with them. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. If you don't want to answer questions concerning other strength coaches, that's cool. Some people don't like that. I can always critique. I don't like to critique for the sake of it, but if you're asking specifically that, and I'll get to your question after this one, mate. So this one says, dumbbell and barbell complexes. I think they're good for now. How do I phrase this? Right. Barbell complexes for rugby athletes, for me, are not a good idea, simply because that is not a strength or energy demand that is necessary for rugby. They have their place sometimes for learning some technique and for some hypertrophy benefit, but then I'm looking at supersets. I'm not looking at like big barbell or dumbbell complexes. For me, dumbbell and barbell complexes are more of a tool for fat loss, where you're really trying to get a high level of metabolic conditioning by constantly moving the weight. So I'm thinking of like the bear complex, and I've written articles about the bear complex, and I've done videos about it and built programs that use it. For me now, I would rather spend my time, if I've got 15 minutes to get in, I'm just going to figure out what my highest priority is. If that's strength, I'm just going to do 15 minutes of strength work. If that's conditioning, I'm going to do 15 minutes of more intense conditioning work, right? I don't think what you kind of do, and I did a series on this years ago on my Instagram. It was called Two Stones and No Birds, because what you're doing here with barbell complexes for me is you're getting the negatives of the strength work, which is having to load up the barbell, doing all of that stuff, getting a level of fatigue that that pushing a weight and doing different movements gives you to an extent, right? But you're not getting any aerobic benefit out of it because it's not, your heart rate doesn't get to high enough until it gets too high. It's just too, it's not an aerobic type movement. And you're also, because you're under fatigue, you're not getting the power benefit. Like if you're doing cleans in that, or if you're doing jumps, or if you're doing explosive squats, even with a light weight, you're not getting the power benefit out of it because you're too fatigued to do it. You're also not really getting the muscle building benefit. I mean, you are, but you're not getting it anywhere near as you're not getting the muscle building benefit anywhere near as effectively as just one straight set of 10, or 3 sets of 10, or Maya reps. These things are much more specific. So what we get with barbell complexes is an idea that tries to tick all the boxes but doesn't really tick any of them, and it ticks it enough for someone that just wants to get into the gym and burn some fat and have some fun, because they're kind of cool to do. But when you're looking at the specific conditioning that you need for rugby, and you're looking at the specific strength and power demands that you need for rugby, and potentially even the muscle building demands that you need for rugby, this doesn't really tick any of them efficiently. And even if you were to have the exact same amount of time dedicated to other movements, just separating them is a much better idea, in my opinion. Some other people can maybe have ways of doing it better. That's just me. Is there room for some bodybuilding type training that you recommend for rugby? As we knew, absolutely, yeah. Particularly, I think there's room for muscle building in all areas. Particularly because you just can't keep slamming your head to the ground with heavy work all year round anyway. I'm actually in my first above 8 rep training phase for months, probably maybe even this year if I think about it. And it's not because I'm thinking, I'm going to grow another inch on my quads. It's just because I've been doing heavy work forever, and I'm just not progressing it at the minute. So I'm gonna take a step back, and I'm already seeing my reps progress with my lighter work, with my sets of 10. Yeah, it's bodybuilding type, but that's gonna help. And yes, I will build a slight bit of extra muscle, a bit of extra tissue there. And then when I go back down and I get heavier, I've also built work capacity to build more strength. And I think with rugby players, when you're going above 6 reps, 8 reps, you're still also building a lot of work capacity, which can help you get more work done in the gym and therefore build more strength in the gym more efficiently. And then when we're looking at outright like isolation type movements, yeah, definitely. And I think is there a body part? I don't think there is a body part where there isn't a case for isolation, right? Because with your quads, you can do some, like people used to always shit on like quad isolation and stuff. Now, because of knees over toes, like everyone loves it and everyone thinks that that's actually, the amount of times I was told when I was a kid, don't do leg extensions, to an extent, don't do squats because that's bad for your knees. Now it's like, no, everyone loves doing stuff like quad work because it actually apparently bulletproofs their knees, Same thing for hamstring work. And obviously, bicep and tricep stuff is good to fill your jersey and your sleeves, but it's also good for your elbows, and it's also good for contact situations, right? Because yes, you can train most of you can train your biceps mostly by doing like pull-in work, like pull-ups and stuff, but there is a little bit of extra work that you can put into the biceps, and they will, like, I'm not going to say it's going to make a massive difference to your game, but it can add just a little fringe benefit into those contact situations. Potentially when you're trying to rip a ball, or you're over in a ruck, or you're trying to manipulate your opponent, your arms are being used in those situations So why not do a little bit of extra bicep work if you can and if you have the time? And that's something that you want to do. If you're absolutely not interested in it, there's no reason that you would have to do it, but there's no reason why it would harm you. And the reality is, especially for arm isolation, takes 5 minutes. Other areas I'd like to see for rugby players, neck work. So flexion, extension of the neck, lateral flexion and extension, just basic do that once or twice a week for 8 weeks. That will grow your neck. That will be good. Upper traps as well, lower traps for the shoulders, upper traps for, again, more contact based work, not just for concussions, but also for like tackling and not just collision, but like sort of contact situation work. So when you're in a ruck, if you can hold your head up, like especially if you're jackled, if someone shoves your head down, you're going to lose your balance. Camera's going all over the place. If someone shoves your head down because you've got a weak neck, you're going to lose your balance. You're off. Whereas if you can keep your upper back nice and strong, get over that ball, stay over that ball, even when someone's really shoving you, because of your strong neck, strong traps, you're gonna be a more effective player in the ruck. So yeah, big fan of bodybuilding type work. You've just got to make sure, because I've coached so many rugby players that, and potentially was guilty of this myself when I first started, a lot of our information comes from bodybuilding, and therefore we see everything through a bodybuilding lens. That's not the solution either, right? It's not about chest this day, back this day, or quads this day. It's not about the body parts and growing them specifically. There's a lot more that goes into strength and conditioning, particularly for rugby or for any athlete, actually, to be fair, when we're talking about weight training, than it is than just building muscle, right? Whereas bodybuilding, that's all there is, So you just got to make sure you don't go too far down that rabbit hole or that lens of things. It's neither extreme. It's somewhere in between, right? Because you got those people that say, bodybuilding, yeah, no, definitely not. That's just bodybuilding. What, you're going to stiffen up? You're going to do that? Not really. And then the other side, yeah, you just got to train a muscle, get it as big as possible, and then you're going to still be the best athlete you can be, because you're going to build strength with that muscle, etc., etc. Not really there. Somewhere in the middle. Sometimes it's good, but it's not going to be the whole thing. It's just another tool. Same as anything. Same as Olympic lifting. Same as sprint work. Same as jumps. Same as machines versus free weights. Everything. Like, when you're trying to be a good rugby athlete, you want to combine all the different, and this is what I've done basically with rugby muscle. I've not just leaned on the experts that I've learned from as far as like rugby athletes, but I've learned from rugby coaches. I've learned from coaches of CrossFit, of marathon, of what else have we done? Rowers. I've learned from guys in football. I've learned from bodybuilders, powerlifters, Ironman, calisthenics, gymnastics. Like, there's so many different things that go into, like, because I do think that there's a new trend now of hybrid athlete, and we as rugby players pretty much are the ultimate hybrid athlete, because you've got to be strong and explosive, not just at one point, but throughout 80 minutes. And you've got to be ideally as strong in the 75th minute as you are in the first, and as fast as you are in the first, and also making decisions and agile. So the demands of a rugby athlete are probably greater than any other sport if they're at the top level, right? So the athletes that you see right at the top of rugby pretty much are up there with, like, they're not quite there with the cathletes because there's such a skill component to rugby, but that's the level of athlete that we're looking at, right? Is really like every end of the spectrum, strong, powerful, but also conditioned and mobile and robust, all of those at the same time. All right, last question before we finish. Then I go pick up my laundry. Patrick says, thanks for commenting, Patrick. He says, do you think rugby would benefit with 25 players instead of 23? No. I think rugby would benefit with less subs, to be honest. I think if we look at the top level of rugby, I think if we're looking at like player welfare, which rugby thinks it's really worried about, it's purely you're going to reduce you have no choice but to reduce the amount of collisions, or the amount of huge collisions, right? And the big players that are playing. How do you do that? How do you make sure that all of your players are huge and continually performing for the 80 minutes? You know what you do? You put 7 of your forwards on the bench and then you bring them off, and you bring them on after 50 minutes so that your forwards only have to play, instead of 80 minutes, now they have to play 40, get a break, then they play like 5 or 10 more minutes, give it everything, knowing that they can come off. That's going to guarantee you massive collisions. Whereas if you force everyone to play 80 minutes, all of a sudden we've got more fatigued players, or we've got players that have to have such a level of condition that they just can't carry around that amount of muscle mass. Try and keep the game moving as well. If you saw in the World Cup, the amount of times that we would stop for a water break or we'd stop for like 5 minutes and they'd start pumping music out in the stadium, and you're like, what's going on here? Is this American football? And all these giant athletes that are worried about their big collisions are getting their breath back, ready to go again. I think we would, from the top level, benefit from less substitutions. At the lower level, I also think, if you're looking at any tier of like amateur rugby, you're either dealing with an athlete that can last 80 minutes, or you're not dealing with an athlete that's a threat that needs to get off after that long. And what you're doing is you're forcing teams that or teams that have, maybe a roster of like 40 players in total of a game that is, let's be honest, in the US and England, the stats show, and we're all lads here so far, I believe, men's rugby participation is dropping, right? So if you've got a team that's a squad of 40, right, now you've got to field 22 for your first team, or 23 for your first team. Now you're only left with 17 for your second team. Maybe you can squeeze that out. Maybe I've done a bad example, but you get my point. Is that if you reduce the amount of substitutions that you would need on a lower tier roster, all of a sudden we can have more games, right? Because what happens is, let's say it's a squad of 30. That squad of 30 or 35 could have been 2 full teams if we're only allowing 2 or 3 subs. Now that's definitely can't be more than 1 squad. And so what we've left is 8 people that are new to the game or not as good at the game that now can't play that weekend, going to get gradually over time more and more disinterested. I found that one of the biggest struggles with amateur rugby in the US was that you're always supposed to field a 23, and like, why not just have 3 subs, sub them out as they need, and then give everyone else more game time at a lower level. So yeah, I think less subs is better. Do you recommend fasted press for time? Doesn't matter. If like, I guess we'll answer. So let me read this question out. He says, do you recommend training fasted if you're pressed for time and have to squeeze a session in the morning? Yeah, there is no perfect answer for this. So some people will want, some people will train in the morning and they'll be really hungry. Most people won't. You'll get used to it. Just make sure you're hydrated. If you want if you want to have a nice black coffee before you go, fine. But it depends how early you go. If you have time and if you find yourself flagging towards the end of the session, it might be a good idea to drink on like a Lucozade or at least an electrolyte type drink. Make sure you're drinking water. Maybe a banana before your session can help, although it's not going to make the biggest difference. As long as because really if you train first thing in the morning, your fuel is going to come from your dinner. Your dinner's still in your system, right? It's ready to fuel you for your morning activity, and you should be fine. If that session goes over an hour, and this isn't, I don't think that'll be the case because you said you're pressed for time, then maybe you would look to get some food either before or during that session. And when I say food, I just mean calories. So that could just be like a protein shake with Gatorade or whatever sports drink you want, or it could just be a couple bananas, and you'd be fine. But really, if you're not training again later in that, or within the next few hours after that session, it wouldn't make a big difference either. Anyways, so just make sure you're eating enough throughout the day. Monitor your performance. If it is starting to drop at the end of the day, or at the end of the session, maybe have some fast-acting carbs during that session. If you find that you're weaker in the first thing in the morning than you are in the evening, that's normal. That's just how it is. But you would just adjust your numbers, right? So say if you squatted 120 kilos at 5 p.m. and for sets of 5 and you felt great, maybe at 7 a.m. you're doing like 110, but you're just going to all that anyway, or 115, and you would be fine. Again, the key is just going to be whatever you can do to stay consistent. All right, cool. That will round out the session. Like I said, if you want to join in our Telegram group and get going with the Rugby Athlete Blueprint, we start with introductions on Sunday, and we'll get right into the program on Monday. Like I said, it's live. You'll be able to reach out to me personally and absolutely free. So if you want to give that a go, the Telegram group is in the comments below. Thank you, everybody, for watching, for commenting. Giak, I will get to that question another time. Actually, go on and I'll answer it real quick. Giak says, do you believe that you can train to actually become a dog? Yes, but not in the gym. You have to be really fit to be like a Faf de Klerk type player. But it's also about mindset as you train, and you can train for that mindset by just being self-aware. But you have to be fit and you have to be strong in the first place. When I think dog, I don't think Faf de Klerk. I think of Quagga Smith, that type of player, or Ben Earl. And again, it's a mindset that also has to be trained for, but that style of play just doesn't work if you are not really, really, really aerobically fit, and also then follow that aerobic fitness up, or use that aerobic fitness and strength and power and whatever with a mindset that you're just never going to stop and you're just going to fucking annoy people for the whole game. All right, cool. Thanks for that last question. All right, thanks everyone for watching. Been a good time. I think this time was better. I don't know how I've managed to put that comment on the video. This has been a success. Give the video a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. Check out the Telegram in the group below. Look out for more announcements from me. It's been a pleasure. Have a good weekend, everybody, and I'll talk to you in the next one.